Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy February, everybody. Today, we are going to take a look at your sun and rising sign horoscopes for the month of February. This is an abbreviated version this month because I'm still in the grind of fulfilling Kickstarter rewards. And I should be done in about another week or so, but I've been slowly getting back into the groove. So there's two transits that I'm tracking this month for all 12 signs. So again, a little abbreviated. You might have noticed that my monthly overview for February only included a few big transits. The transits that I'm tracking for you this month is a massive Aquarian stellium happening around the new moon on February 11th, and also a Saturn square to Uranus that's happening on the 17th. So these two dates, 11th and 17th, fall towards the middle of the month. That's where the action of the month is. You can also plug in the general houses of Taurus and Aquarius for the purposes really of the whole month. There's a few transits from Venus and Saturn, Venus and Uranus that I also talked about in monthly overview. I'm not going to talk about those in this monthly horoscope. It's kind of implied in the house topic exchange, especially considering so many planets are concentrating in Aquarius and Taurus. So that's just a little qualifier before I dive in. We'll be going through all 12 signs, starting with Aries. You should find some timestamps for where your sign aligns in the recording. I recommend using your rising sign always in Hellenistic astrology. We use whole sign houses, and your rising sign is going to correspond to the same makeup as your birth chart. So that's why I recommend using it. But, some people prefer their sun sign. That's fine too. All right, I'm going to put the real-time clock up, and we're just going to go for it. So first of all, we're going to start with Aries on the ascendant, and I'm going to start off by talking about the new moon. Now, the new moon is on the 11th, so it's the first big event of the month. And I'll just put the 11th up on the screen. So here you can see, if you're an Aries rising, you've got this massive stellium in Aquarius on February 11th. So that is happening in your 11th house. If you're in Aries, the action of the 11th house will point toward the importance of groups, allies, friends, or benefactors, or anyone that you would consider to have or share similar ambitions, visions, values, whether they're religious or professional or political, perhaps. In a broader sense, it's the friends that you have in life that share similar aims and ambitions. And also those kinds of groups or people who tend to benefit you. This was called the house of good spirit and the joy of Jupiter. So there's a lot of, and the new moon on the 11th is going to plant a new seed in that area of life. Okay, so a new seed doesn't show up right away. It takes a while, but there's something new that's getting started in that area of life. Should have a very positive effect in time, especially given that Jupiter is there all year for you. But remember, Saturn may imply some hard work along the way. That's kind of par for the course, that there's also some deeper and more serious things happening in that area of life as well. So it's not all just fun and games. But on the 17th, then you're going to see, and I'm not going to advance it, I'll just kind of point it out. You'll see Saturn perfecting a square to Uranus, and that happens on the 17th. So we've talked about this a bunch in videos that I've done in the past weeks. There's a push-pull this month between the contractive, conservative, limiting, defining, mature, serious, sober, disciplined qualities of Saturn, as well as the kind of Uranian, rebellious, original, innovative qualities of Uranus. So you're pitting those two against one another. When that happens, there's going to be a push-pull between innovation, freedom, rebellion, the desire to experiment, and a more contractive energy. And for you this month, if you're an Aries rising, that's happening between your financial house, your house of resources, income and expenditures, material possessions, things that you have or are in possession of, whether they're material or also maybe things that you have as a skill or something that you can use. So there's this desire for breakthrough in that area of your life and change and innovation, but it's also coming up against some maybe more conservative qualities or more severe and somewhat conservative energy from that house of friends, allies, groups, organizations, and so forth. So what's that going to look like this month? Pay attention to these polarizing energies happening in those two areas of your life. How is finances, or how is business and finances sort of corresponding or correlating to larger social connections or groups or institutions or organizations you belong to, or social circles that you belong to, and so forth. So that's the action if you're an Aries rising. All right, we're going to move ahead now. We're going to put Taurus on the ascendant. Now, if you're a Taurus rising, this is a big month because you're getting that full stellium in Aquarius in your career house, the 10th house. So the new moon on the 11th is going to land squarely in the career house, planting a seed of future development and change. You've also got Mercury retrograde in that house right now. So some revision or reorientation or even reversals, change of direction. And all of this is planting a new seed that's going to take time to grow. It's going to grow over, say, the next 5 or 6 months until we see, say, a full moon in Aquarius over the summer in Leo season. You'll start to see some of it blossom at that time. Usually that's how they work. It's kind of like the new moons get planted in the Aquarian season, and the full moon in Aquarius later in the year, you're going to see some of that start to manifest. So big changes in the career that are going to take through the summer to really show up. All right, so that's the new moon that's in your career house. Now, there's also this kind of fundamental tension between the conservative, hardworking, disciplined, and more austere qualities of Saturn in your career house, and the desire for greater personal freedom, change, and innovation. Very personal in your first house, which is the house of self and identity. So whereas your character may be evolving or growing or seeking greater freedom or personal expression in a kind of new or different way, they're contending also with Saturn in the career house. How are you trying to change your career to fit a new version of you? Or how are you changing as a result of your career changing? These are the two areas that there's a lot of back and forth with this month for you. So if you're a Taurus rising, that's where you're going to see the action. Now, I apologize. I know you guys are used to me taking a lot more time per sign, but I'm going lickety split because I'm basically I'm like when I remember when I was a kid and there was going through swimming lessons, and there was a lesson level that you had to pass where you just had to like go into the deep end where the diving board was and just tread water for like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something like that. That's how my life feels right now with all the recordings that I'm doing for the Kickstarter, plus my readings, plus my classes, plus everything else. So these are just short today because I'm in a little bit of survival mode at the moment, but we'll be back to it next month. So, okay. Apologetics of my life aside, let's go to Gemini rising. Your Gemini rising on the 11th, that new moon is coming into your 9th house. Now, the 9th house is the place of higher education, the higher mind, religion, spirituality. You could even say foreign places or long journeys or pilgrimages. When a seed is being planted in that area, usually it means new teachers, new learning. If you are a teacher, something new that you're teaching, or a new curriculum, or a new rebirth or renewal of spiritual life, especially because Mercury is retrograde in that house. But there's a seed being planted. There's a lot of growth this year around the topics of religion, spirituality, higher learning, teachers and teaching, traveling, or places from foreign places and their influence on your life, or people from other places in the world and their influence on your life. Those are all the kinds of things to look for. A seed is getting planted this month that will take a while to blossom. It's very powerful because you can see, look at how massive that stellium is, right? And it should be pretty fortunate overall, especially with Venus and Jupiter co-present in that sign. Now, the Uranus-Saturn dynamic that comes in on the 17th, that comes in between the 9th and the 12th houses. What is that? You're now adding in, aside from the place of the higher mind and the kind of more serious focus that's being placed there, you have this really erratic, rebellious Uranian energy in the 12th house, which can also be a place of self-undoing, of outsiders, of heretics, of wandering, of getting lost, of people or things that undermine you, including yourself. So this kind of erratic energy in the 12th, is it suggesting that there's a renewal of faith or a total change of your sort of paradigm or your religious or spiritual beliefs or views? And is that coming from a rebellious and destructive place, or is it coming from the desire to break free from things that are maybe that you find unacceptable? Like, this is a kind of like faith and rebellion going together, and that could be positive or that could be negative. Learning and rebellion, positive or negative. Learning and addressing things that undermine, and that could be sometimes we adopt beliefs that reinforce our ability to be destructive, and other times we adopt beliefs because we know that we need to change something that has been destructive in our life. Those are the kinds of things that you might be looking at if you're a Gemini rising. All right, so we're going to keep going. We'll put Cancer on the ascendant. Now, Cancer on the ascendant, you've got a huge new moon, emphasis on the 8th house. And that's a little bit scary. Like if you're a Cancer, I'd be looking at this being like Cancer rising. I'd be like, whoa, what does that mean? Well, on the one hand, if you're thinking of taking out a loan, this would be a powerful signature of receiving some kind of aid or big loan or benefit or, money from someone else, inheritance. But it can also point to, the bottom line is that 8th house sometimes has to do with death. It's like the death card in tarot. That's not always pleasant, right? So a new moon in the house of death may mean that there's something that's about to get released, or there's an expiration date that's coming up in your life. That doesn't have to mean literal death. The death card very rarely in my experience with tarot means literal death, but there is a letting go. There's an ending. And sometimes there's a karmic bill that comes due. That's the nature of the 8th house, so associated with penalties and taxes and death, which is the ultimate bill that we all have to pay, right? So, but there's benefit here too. It's not just going to be heavy. The Saturn is heavy, but you've got Venus, Jupiter there. There's kind of a Mercury retrograde, redoing something, a seed that's being planted here that will manifest in time. So watch for that. And then on the 17th, you've got Saturn and Uranus. Now, Uranus in the 11th, it has to do with the desire to be free, or to, what do I want to say? It's the energy of the rebel in the place associated with groups of people, with allies, and again, with benefactors and friends. So I also wonder about this in terms of, is there a way in which group involvement, or a certain group of friends, or a certain organization or group is facing some kind of karmic reckoning? Sometimes it's going to be colleagues or at work who get in trouble, or it's going to be that getting the place that you work for is getting penalized in some way, or it could be that religious or spiritual groups that you belong to are asking for a deeper level of commitment, say financially or energetically. The 8th house can have to do with things that we end up giving to other people to support them, or that they give to us. So is there some way in which you're participating in some kind of revolutionary group activity, but asking to give money, or asking to give more of yourself to it? Or is there some kind of scandal or controversy around groups of friends or in organizations, and a kind of karmic bill that's due? I wouldn't be surprised if, that there is some real benefits coming through groups right now, and deeper soul contracts that are coming about. And also, you're looking at how and where to invest your future, and what's going to give you the greatest degree of freedom, and also considerations about what kind of community or what kind of people you want to surround you for quite a while, I think. Okay, so those are a few ideas that come to mind between the 11th and the 8th. Always a tricky combination, the 11th and the 8th squares. So let me know. I'd love to hear in the chat box some of your stories if you're a Cancer this month, especially because that one is, I'm curious about it because I have several good people, friends in my life, including my wife, who also has Cancer in the 1st house. Anyway, all right, let's push along to Leo. So where does that new moon take place? If you're a Leo, it takes place in your 7th house. So that huge stellium in Aquarius is landing in the house associated with marriage and relationships. Maybe more broadly speaking, intimate, personal relationships of all kinds, but marriage, sexuality, relationships. There is a Mercury retrograde happening in that house, some revisions or reversals, a new seed that's being planted. Not surprising to see Leos getting into a new relationship this month. That would not be surprising at all, but also changes to existing relationships and benefits coming through people in your life, maybe even people who have a certain degree of affluence or fame or something like that. And the reason for that is that Venus and Jupiter are conjoining at the time of the new moon in the 7th, which is sometimes a sign of, people who are affluent or learned or helpful in some way entering our lives. All right, so the next transit is happening on the 17th. And that's going to be Saturn square to Uranus. Now, these social relational changes that are happening are also, and they're a little more serious with Saturn there as the ruler. But they're happening as Uranus is also, since May of 2018, been trying to create something of a revolution in your career house. So Saturn Uranus getting into a dialogue. How are certain kinds of relationships and the duties, necessities, or karmic requirements of certain relationships interacting with this need or desire for revolution, change, greater freedom, and innovation or originality, some kind of defiance in the career house? So they're in a dialogue this month, and you just watch for tension between relationships and the workplace, the serious necessities of relationships versus the desire for experimentation and rapid change or innovation in career. So that's what you're dealing with this month if you're a Leo rising. All right, let's push ahead to Virgo. So if you are a Virgo rising, then you've got the massive stellium in your sixth house. Fun. So the sixth house is a place that was associated with hard work, labor, servitude, slavery. It's also associated with sickness, illness, or conflict, disease, but also people who tend to have a sacrificial attitude. Let me serve, let me sacrifice. Hard work that eventually pays off sometimes comes from the sixth house. And how we deal with and work through frustrations, conflict, and in it to a certain extent, just strife. The sixth house was called the house of misfortune and the joy of Mars, god of strife. It's just a difficult house, but the work we do in this house really pays off. So if you're a Virgo rising, there's a seed getting planted this month that suggests benefit from this area of life because you've got Venus and Jupiter, the two benefics, conjoining at the time of this new moon. Got a well-dignified Saturn. So it looks to me like, again, the phrase that I always use is rewards for hard work done. It's not going to show up right away. I don't think. The new moon plants a seed that says there's a certain degree of turmoil or sickness or difficulty or laboring through something. If you stick with it, there's a promise here of things to come. So that's the way I'm reading this month. But don't be surprised if it shows up as like, surprise, here's a set of challenges that you have to work through from the new moon forward, especially with Mercury retrograde in that house as well. A little bit more of a difficult placement for the Mercury retrograde. But there's also tension, and on the 17th, we're going to see Saturn in the 6th square to Uranus in the 9th. Part of this period of hard work, or this emphasis on the 6th house, if you're a Virgo rising, is coinciding with this desire for revolution in the house of the higher mind, spirituality, religion, learning. I have seen so many people with the 6th, 9th house squares going through PhD programs, going back to school, learning a new skill, craft, or trade, going through an apprenticeship, traveling abroad to do some kind of service work, trying to put their beliefs into concrete actions in the world. So there's a lot of really positive things that come from this combination. But the question is, how does the 6th house hard work motif and maybe some struggles square up with the need or desire for revolution of the higher mind? And those are the kinds of things that are coming through for you on the 17th with the first Saturn-Uranus square. There's going to be two more this year. We'll be coming back to those later in the year, obviously. All right, so let's go ahead to Libra rising. So if you're a Libra rising, this new moon is falling into your 5th house, which is traditionally called the house of good fortune and the joy of Venus. It's a house associated with everything that's pleasant, romantic, sensual, creative, relaxing, happy. This is a house that just makes you happy, and it's associated with creativity as well, the arts and so forth, also with pregnancy and children. So a seed getting planted around those things usually means it's something you're going to enjoy, or something that you're with Saturn there, right? Something you're starting to take more seriously as a source of joy or pleasure. People get serious with Saturn goes into the 5th house about the things that they love. And it's a weird combination because Saturn in the 5th can also mean that you're having trouble prioritizing joy and happiness because there's some tendency to be too Saturnine. So exploration of happiness, joy, and what makes a person really glad. What are the things that we do that are childlike or that make our lives happy, creative, fulfilling? Those are the themes that you're exploring right now. You're either getting more serious about something or you're trying to loosen up so that you can enjoy something a little bit more. That's the broad way of looking at it. And then maybe the topic of children and pregnancy comes up, a new moon in the fifth house. Maybe there's a pregnancy coming along, new things happening for children, like they're going to a new school, or some kind of new chapter that's happening for your kids. Those would all be the kinds of things to look for. Also, sometimes just romantic, trysts, is that what they call them? Like little romantic escapades. They can pop up when you have new moons in the fifth house. Whether it's substantive or not takes time. Now, this fifth house stellium is also coming as Saturn makes the square to Uranus in the eighth. Now, here's the thing about this. Whenever you have the fifth to eighth house square, the fifth house is a lot of fun, but the eighth house has this theme of, or it relates to this idea that there are karmic bills that come due for everything in life, death being the final one. So when you're looking at pleasure, joy, sex, children, it's like they come with bills, all of it, all the joyful stuff in life. When it's connected to the eighth house, you always have to be careful that it's coming with a bill. And sometimes with Uranus in the eighth, there's this kind of rebellious motif. Like, I don't have to pay a bill. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to deal with any consequences. And Saturn in the fifth might pull back and say, look, maybe it's better here that we just have no fun in case something bad happens or in case there's a bill that's due. So you can have two really extreme attitudes. One that's like completely careless and ignores the fact that karmic bills come if we're reckless, frivolous, or hedonistic. But on the other hand, you have Saturn, who might not take any risks at all and be a killjoy. So I think those are some of the extremes that might present themselves. And also the idea of being free from different limitations or constraints for the sake of joy, creativity, and so forth. But rebelliousness stands out to me in this one, and dealing with it positively or negatively, more than most placements this month if you're a Libra rising. So, all right, that's for Libras. Let's push on to Scorpio. So if you are a Scorpio rising, the new moon is falling in your fourth house, and that is going to be the place of home, family, parents, roots, land, property, your foundation. So a new moon there means something new is developing. Sometimes you're going to see, elders pass away or children being born, marriages happening, children being born. It's something new happening around the roots. A new house, renovating a new house, renting a new place, moving out, moving in. Also just setting up some kind of foundation psychologically for the next phase of life. But you're kind of trying to get your feet beneath you, get grounded. So there's a lot of that energy for Scorpios this month. And then you're looking at the square now between Saturn in the fourth and Uranus in the seventh. So Uranus in the seventh loves experimentation, freedom, originality, breaking the rules in relationships in the seventh house. Saturn in the fourth is trying to get more grounded, more serious about things pertaining to home and roots. So that's an awkward fit for Saturn Uranus, particularly out of all the signs this month, because, okay, for example, does getting grounded at home mean saying, look, I can't live with you anymore, I've just got to live by myself? Does Saturn around the home say, look, if you're non-committal, then I'm out because I need some security? Or on the other hand, is there the sudden desire to move in with someone and it's kind of crazy and destabilizing, but like, who cares? Let's do it. It's that combination of the more conservative energy around home and family kind of clashing with this disruptive, more individual or independence-seeking Uranus in the house of relationships. So that's a little bit more of a tough one, but there is good fortune coming in around the roots with Venus and Jupiter, and a Mercury retrograde suggesting some kind of revision around home and roots this month if you're a Scorpio rising. All right, let's go forward to Sagittarius. If you're a Sagittarius rising, then the stellium is going to move into, let's back this up by one day. The stellium in Aquarius will be in your third house, which was called Goddess and the Joy of the Moon. The third house really has to do with everything that's sort of swirling around the base. If your base is your home, then it's all the activities in the home and around the home, and it's your mind and your daily moods and fluctuations of mind stuff and mood stuff. And it's also, you could say, if you live in a little village or city or town or something like that, it's it's the busy beehive that circulates around, and it's the gossip, and it's the things happening around us. So third house, it's also the place of siblings and neighbors. So a new moon in this house often means that there's something new happening. I've seen it with technology or transit or media or something about communication, or your mind is changing, or there's something coming in this month through people that are sort of close around you. It's kind of like good fortune in the atmosphere around you with Venus and Jupiter. Mercury retrograde, there's also changes happening to the daily routines or the daily environment. So I like to think of this as kind of like one of the analogies that I've used is, have you ever seen an anthill get knocked over, right? What do the ants do? It's like right away, they're just like, okay, we'll just go to work, just back to work. They just immediately, they're just like, okay, we're going back to work and we're redoing this thing. We're going to reroute that. We're going to reroute this. I feel like Mercury retrogrades in the third house, and also Saturn in the third house, speak to the need to kind of reroute our mind, our body, our mood around a common base, or around, your daily life is kind of getting rewired in some way. And this is a big one for you if you're a Sag rising. It's going to take a while to take effect. But there's good fortune that comes with it. Like the adjustments that you're making here should be beneficial with Venus and Jupiter conjoining. So, and watch for, probably good news or some interesting developments around siblings or neighbors or things like that. I love these kinds of transits usually coincide, I've noticed, with people like, I got a new computer, I started a new blog, I built a new website. Those kinds of things tend to come up. All right, so then there's the square between Saturn and Uranus, and that's happening really all month, but on the 17th it perfects. Now, Uranus is in that sixth house along with Mars. And remember, the sixth house is a place that's associated with strife, hard work. When you have Uranus in the sixth, that's a little bit of a disruptive place for Uranus. Uranus, a god of sudden changes, rebellion, in a house associated with strife and challenges. So I wonder if part of this month isn't also about a push-pull with trying to stabilize elements of the mind and the environment while dealing with these kind of unexpected turbulences that pop up. That's going to be par for the course for you this year if you're a Sagittarius, but there's a lot to be learned. And just think that every disruption or element of chaos or difficulty that comes up, and as you're trying to maybe establish a different way of organizing your life or your space or your mind, or trying to get better control of your mind, that as that stuff comes up, it's coming up for a reason. It's giving you feedback that you need in order to become a more stable person. So just think about it that way. I think it'll help. All right, so let's go forward to Capricorn rising. So you put Capricorn on the ascendant, and that big, huge stellium lands in your second house. So there's a lot happening here around money, income and expenditures, resources, material possessions. Anyone who acts as an immediate resource to you in your everyday life that you rely on for something, those kinds of resources or assets can also belong to the second house. It can have to do with business or the launching of business, or things that you build or make, or income that you produce through your own effort. So new investments, a new way of dealing with finances, a new revenue stream, a promotion. It should be pretty good with Venus, Jupiter there, but there is some kind of revision happening with Mercury retrograde, and there's a heavier emphasis on changes around money and finances and the business side of your life this year with Saturn in your second house. But this new moon is planting a new seed around all of these topics that will grow in time. So the Saturn energy is now going to be square to the Uranus energy in the fifth house. So one of the things that comes up here is, here's this kind of conservative energy around money, finances, and resources squaring off with this more creative, rebellious, pleasure-seeking energy or creative energy in the fifth house. They've got to figure it out together. And this is another placement that might be a little bit difficult, because Saturn in the second is like, let's shore up our resources. Let's dot all of our T's and cross all of our I's. Let's get an accountant. Let's start a business. Let's have a business plan. Uranus in the fifth house is like, let's just throw down a canvas and splatter paint, has more of that kind of feeling to it. So there's going to be a conversation around the conservative qualities of Saturn in the place of money and finances, and the erratic, eccentric, original qualities of Uranus in the house of creativity, joy, and pleasure. So you watch for that. Now, things that could also come up would be unexpected costs related to children, or kind of like a push-pull around. If you have kids, this could be a month where you're trying to figure out how to use resources in order to best support your children. So that could come up as well. All right, so let's go forward to Aquarius rising. Here it is, finally at last, probably the sign that's going to have the, going to receive the biggest impact from this new moon. Aquarians, of course. If you're an Aquarius rising, the new moon's in your first house. Mercury retrograde in that first house, plus Saturn, your ruling planet, plus Venus and Jupiter conjoining. Wow, what can you say? First thing is that there's some way in every movie, right? Well, movies are different. Some movies are plot driven. Some movies are more defined by the environment. Some movies are character driven. So this is a fork in the road when it comes to your character. Who am I? What is the nature of my personality and character in what role am I playing in life? What duties do I feel bound by? What is my dharma, my sense of righteous duty or service to others, or the sense, fate, character is destiny. I think it was Heraclitus that said that. And so there's a way in which you're exploring fate, duty, responsibility, and character. And this is a time for character evolution for you if you're an Aquarius rising. The Mercury retrograde implies some kind of revision or change of your character. Venus and Jupiter suggests that there's some good fortune surrounding you right now. The new moon planting a new seed for personal growth and change. Saturn, more serious exploration of your own character and what you feel obligated to. That's Saturn. So there's a lot there if you're an Aquarius rising. Now, this is all in dialogue, of course, on the 17th. Saturn perfects its square to Uranus in the fourth house of home, family, property, parents, family karma. So Saturn squaring that Uranus down there is suggesting that all of this is happening as you are also exploring the need for revolution at the roots, around home, around family, around property, around living environment, around family karma. So this feels really existential for Aquarians to me when it gets into that vulnerable space of home, family, and then so personal in the first house. All right. So finally, we've got a Pisces rising. And if you're a Pisces rising, fun for you, it's all landing in your 12th house. Now there's a really good side to that and potentially a really challenging side to that, especially given the Saturn-Uranus square. First of all, the really positive side to this is that solitude, reflectiveness, contemplation, those are things that can really open your mind this month. The potential for a silent retreat or upping your meditation game or anything where you're sort of distancing yourself from the world and becoming reflective as a student, a thinker, a prayer, I think that someone who prays or someone who meditates, those things can reward you very deeply this month. Remember, there are benefics in this house coming together, and there's something about a change of mind and the need for some distance from something. All of those Saturn 12th house qualities that could be very rewarding on a kind of spiritual or, kind of contemplative level. The downside is that the 12th house is the place that tends to undermine us, either from other people, something in the environment, something within ourselves. So you want to be very careful that you're not starting something new in your life that looks really good and shiny. Two benefics, woo! But it represents something that is going to be destructive in time. A new relationship, a new habit, something that is going to effectively, wear on you in time. So you want to be careful of that undermining influence. And it's something that can be very subtle in the 12th house. But my guess is that with so many planets lining up in the 12th, you should be able to see very clearly what's coming in. And just remember, whatever's coming in could be something that gives me a broader, deeper perspective that helps me let go of my ego, that helps me let go of feeling I have to be in control of everything, that gives me broader insight into myself and reality. Those things pretty positive in the 12th. The negative side is losing myself, getting deluded, going down a path that is grandiose or not grounded in reality, letting someone or something undermine me, including myself. So be careful of temptation doors opening in that regard as well. On the other hand, for the Pisces, You've got, this is probably, a lot of this is also going to be something involving the need that you have for change in your immediate environment or in your mind, because the Saturn in the 12th is squaring Uranus in the third, a place associated with the mind and with the influences and effects of the immediate environment. So you're seeking some kind of revolution or change in your mind, your thinking, in your daily life, or in the way that activities happen around you every day, in your neighborhood, or just in the way that mental energy or emotional energy works in your life. So while you're seeking change in that area, the 12th house can kind of give you the distance and perspective you need to make that kind of change happen. On the other hand, it can also suggest a degree of sort of chaos and difficulties in mind and mood, and they may be rather unconscious. So exploration of unconscious themes that are defiant or reckless could be a part of this month, as could the need to create some kind of revolution in your life. But the kind of revolution needs more space. It needs more distance. It needs that 20,000 foot view. So be sure to take it if you're feeling that you need some space or you're getting burnt out, because this combination can also lead to a kind of like mental, nervous, what do I want to say? Not breakdowns. That's probably too serious, but like just strain, right? So be careful of that. All right, so that takes me through all 12 signs. I know that this was sort of a crash course, faster than my usual, but such is life. It's been a really busy opening to the year. I look forward to breaking down the transits of the month together on in the rest of the videos that I do. Please leave your comments in the chat section and tell me how you are noticing these energies showing up in your life based on whatever your rising sign is, or if you use your sun sign. I'd love to hear your stories about how you saw these combinations playing out. I always learn a lot from that, and then I develop like a new kind of repertoire of possible themes or possible events that can crop up when I hear your stories. So please feel free to share them. I hope you guys have a great month, and we'll be in touch with more soon. Take it easy, everyone.